his student years. These days, Rick was an advertising executive based in Auckland, though he still found time to visit his father's rambling idyll out here on the magical Bay of Islands. Charlotte and Chloe loved it when Rick was around. Already, he was like the brother Charlotte had never had, and seeing the way Chloe had taken to him, even calling him Uncle Wick, was so sweet that it made Charlotte's heart sing like a bird. Rick's too, if his beaming smiles and overindulgence were anything to go by. That Chloe could relate so well to a man after all she'd been through was the greatest source of joy for Charlotte. However, the damage was far from healed, and since they'd escaped the nightmare, Rick was really the only man in whose company Chloe seemed able to relax. It pained Charlotte to see how withdrawn she became if Bob spoke to her, especially when he was so gentle and kind. Of course, he understood about her past, and though it must surely sadden him not to be able to swing her up in his arms and rough and tumble her the way he did his other grandchildren, he never tried to force her. How awful it must have been for him to be likened, in Chloe's mind, to her monster of a father. But he never let it show, nor spoke a single word about the pain this caused him. For the most part, however, both Charlotte and Chloe were loving getting to know their new family, which also included Rick's older sister, Shelley, her husband, Phil, and their children, Danny and Craig. Until 7 months ago, which was when Anna, Charlotte's mother, had come back into Charlotte's life, after a 26-year absence, Charlotte hadn't even known that any of these people existed. Now, after 4 months of being here, she was already feeling as though she'd known them for most of her life. She felt so much easier with them than she ever had with her adoptive parents, though if the truth were told, she knew that something inside her still couldn't quite forgive her mother for abandoning her at the age of 3. Of course, she understood why her mother had done it. Anyone would understand if they knew the story of what had happened back then. However, Charlotte only had to look at Chloe, who was currently paddling and poking about in the surf as it swirled and foamed around her chubby ankles, to doubt whether she could ever have done the same. She mustn't be judgmental. It would get her nowhere, and what she really wanted more than anything was to bond with her mother in the way so many daughters did with their mothers. It would take time, she understood that, and they had time now, and once she'd managed to fight off the demons inside her, she felt sure a close and loving relationship would follow. She'd never been close to the woman who'd adopted her. Myra Lake, wife of Douglas, the rector, had never been cruel or neglectful, but nor had she ever really wanted her. It was the rector who'd rescued 3-year-old Charlotte from the terrible tragedy that had struck Charlotte's birth family and taken her home to his wife. Myra and Douglas were both dead now, but their natural daughter, and Charlotte's adoptive sister, Gabby, was very much alive. It always hurt to think of Gabby, so Charlotte inhaled deeply the tangy salt air that embraced her with warmth and the fragrance of flowers, as though the very essence of her new world could stifle the old one. She listened to the music of the waves and chirrup of cicadas, and let her thoughts drift around the bay, along with the terns, shags, and occasionally a gull. When the tide was in, as it was now, a stream of water curved around the back of their cove like an arm, creating a translucent blue brook between their batch and the beach. A swing on ropes dangled over the far side of the brook, while a white wooden footbridge connected their garden to the shingly sand. There were 18 stepping stones leading across their lawn to the batch, and Chloe could count 10 of them in Maori. She was starting to blossom at the Aroha childcare centre in Waipapa. She had friends now, and projects to complete. She was even allowing Charlotte to leave her there for 3 mornings a week, though Charlotte was always anxious during those hours, in case Chloe suddenly blurted out something about her past. Smiling, as Chloe emptied her toy bucket into the surf, Charlotte shouted out, "Find anything?" Chloe's pixie face looked troubled as she shook her head. A lazy sea breeze was tousling her wispy dark